Appreciate you all being here. We, of course, are out there on Twitter Spaces, and we're going to take your calls today. We thought we would just slip in one more show before the new year. We all had a little bit of time here, and we really enjoyed doing these digital shows. So we thought we would give a little more time for phone calls, which we've not had much time for lately. We've been doing so many other things on these shows. So we are out on Twitter Spaces. All you do is raise your hand, and if I do call you up to the podium, you are agreeing to stream out on multiple platforms. It is Twitter, Twitch, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, all over the place. So we'll also talk a little bit about the new year coming up. Again, it is New Year's Eve, and we'll sort of maybe do a little recap of gentle sort of sketch of what we learned for 22 and what might be thinking about in 23. So stay with us.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the final show of 2022. It is, there we are. Welcome to the final show of 2022. It is New Year's Eve. We appreciate you all being here. And again, we're primarily taking calls today. It's primarily what we're doing. Of course, my producers, Caleb and Susan Pinsky, are here, Caleb Nation. And I was thinking about 22 and 22. Well, one of the standout experiences I had in 22 was not so much this show on the Tuesday and Thursday, but the Wednesday show we've been doing with Dr. Kelly Victory and the extraordinary guests I've had the good fortune of interviewing. Now, while I haven't agreed with everybody and I've listened carefully to some of their input and some of it I'm convinced by, some of it I'm not so convinced by, but I've come away from every single interview having learned a little something. And what was most troubling to me during 22 was how confusing everything was during the pandemic. Things I could not understand. Behavior of my peers, the behavior of our profession, some of the silencing and the what we've all discovered from the Twitter files was actually going on. Of course, that was going on multiple platforms and in multiple ways, and fairly disturbing. So I do feel good about having brought to sunlight some positions and some opinions that have been crushed for last couple of years. In terms of things I'm looking forward to in 23, I want to hear more about Ed Dowd's number and how those numbers are playing out and how much of that is COVID, how much of that is COVID plus vaccine, how much of that is vaccine, how much of that is lockdown. That needs to be figured out. By the same token, we'll have Ryan Cole back in here soon, and he's got more pathological data that he's looking at, more pathological specimens, learning more about the process, the pathophysiological process that is assaulting so many of us and causing some of the cardiovascular problems. And we will just I've learned in 2022 just to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and we will keep doing that in 2023. Susan, how about you for 23? Oh, much, huh?
I'm going to keep listening.
The interesting
I learned this year that you're damn smart.
Well, the interesting thing about Susan's experience that it made her paranoid. It made her, and we are going to talk to people that have some ideas.
Well, I have different theories than you, but I think you've come over to my side a little bit.
I worry about some of the things you worry about, and I'm
what would that be, Drew?
I'm just in this state where I'm just generally trying to get a deeper understanding of what is going on here. So many things are mysterious. We are going to talk to a Dr. Lee next year, and she is from China, and she has some insight into what was going on there, and it's going to drive Susan to distraction, I'm afraid, when she hears those stories. So that's going to be tough. But what else for 23 for you?
I'm looking forward to having more confidence that we can say whatever is on our mind.
Right.
And that,
which is weird. I think how weird that is that you have to say that.
And I'm very thankful for having Dr. Kelly on our team.
Yep.
She's just recently gotten back on Twitter.
Oh, right. We're going to announce that today. Yes. And the imposter was taken off.
Yeah. So which
is incredible.
But her, if you go look at her at Dr. Kelly Victory That it's just that. It's not Doc. It's Dr. Dr. Victory. Kelly
Look what she
Victory.
said. Here's one of her tweets
Her
on
tweets
return.
are evergreen.
We're on the dawn of a new, I like this. We're on the dawn of a new year, and it's high time to regain common sense, embrace autonomy, assume personal responsibility, engage in critical thinking, accept risk, and return to the old normal. Facts, not fear. Hashtag rights decide.
So
right
that's what
side
I'm
of
looking
history.
forward to.
Right side of history. Yeah.
Whatever she said. I'll have some of that.
So, and the imposter was taken down. Caleb, how about you?
And we want to thank Casey Gates for trying.
Million views an episode.
Okay.
That's
Was there
my
something
goal.
else you
Share if you care, everybody.
you had mentioned you were gonna announce something else today? Was that just that Kelly was back?
I think it was just that. Yeah, it was the big news that Kelly's back, and also that we now have our verified account for Ask Dr. Drew that people can follow for updates on the show. It's just twitter.com/Ask Dr. Drew, and they can get all the updates
Great.
there. We just joined Twitter Blue.
Excellent. And again, I'm thinking back on some of the little tidbits I pulled from each show. I mean, when talking to Paul Alexander, who has had expressed some opinions lately I've been concerned about, but I still got from him that he was in the room when they made the decision about what social distancing is, this sort of made up term, new term, and how far social distancing needs to be. Turned out 6 feet was invented out of whole cloth with zero evidence, zero science, just do what I say. Same thing when it pertains to some of these cardiovascular problems, the fact that the spike protein is in the wall of arteries in people who are dying suddenly from some of these clotting phenomena. So there is something going on in terms of the endothelium, which is its own organ system. It lines the arteries. Somehow spike, whether it's from Novavax or from the COVID vaccine or from COVID itself, seems to be having a pathophysiological imprint on our clotting system via injury to the endothelium, which is one of the ways to activate that clotting system. To that point, Christine has been working diligently, Christy rather, to try to update us on some of the concerns she had about vaccines. And this is another little scientific sidebar we're going to get into. Christy, thank you for all that work. And can you summarize stuff for us?
I can. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Before you start, I was thinking about your material. She sent me a lot of data and I was looking at it. It's very, very interesting. Novavax has also been shown to have real serious problems with the vaccine in terms of cardiomyopathy and cardiovascular risk, at least similar concerns with the mRNA vaccines. Do they have the same problem with the protein impurities, with the spike protein that they put in Novavax?
Then we're talking about 3 different things because there was the file that I sent you, and then Jicky the mouse had released other files from Australia that showed there are fragments of RNA that don't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you and I were talking about the lipid nanoparticle in the first study that I had found on the freeze-thaw process denoted a change in the cholesterol. And then I just found another study that talks about a different chemical that's actually toxic to the human body that's being released. So if they have LNP, the lipid nanoparticle involved, then you're going to look at the issue with the phosphatidylethylamine being formed, and that is driving the production of thrombin, also prothrombin and fibrin. And then in addition to the spike being formed in the arterial and the endothelium, you've got the triple process of the inflammation of the cell walls and the vascular walls that you were talking about, causing the inflammation from the spike. And then you've also got the prothrombin. And
so let's just summarize what
fibrin.
your reason. Yeah, so to explain to people who you are and what you've done, why this is something that you're particularly suited to look at.
Thanks, Dr. Drew. And hi, Susan and Dr. Victory. You're there.
Victory's not here today. Carrie's not. It's just me today. Just
Caleb.
me and you. Yeah,
Caleb's
Caleb's
here.
Caleb.
Yeah.
Hi, Caleb. I was on the operations team. I wore many hats. I'll just say the company is called Aldevron, focused in Madison, Wisconsin, Fargo, and in Germany. I managed and designed projects for recombinant proteins. Antibodies are a protein, but I had my hands in the process start to finish from when we would get the gene sequence and we would transfect cells using lipid nanoparticles and generate proteins within the cells. And I had a hand in every step of the process to make sure it went smoothly. And I designed them And it got me thinking about the freeze-thaw process of the lipid nanoparticle and if that was causing issues. So that's when I started to dig in. And then, the protein itself and the expression of the protein within the cells, because I designed projects to express proteins all day long. That was my job.
Mm-hmm.
I still do consulting on the side, so I'm no longer associated with that company, and my views expressed are not those of my former company. I just want to state that.
Okay.
But I started digging in when I first contacted you about the lipid nanoparticle. I found a study that was done prior to 2019, so we can say it is unbiased, and it was on the freezing and thawing process of blood serum collected in patients before it was sent off for analysis to look at cholesterol levels. And they found that the cholesterol was going through a change in the freeze-thaw process that they weren't expecting, and it was generating something called phosphatidylethanolamin, which we can just call PE, not pulmonary embolism, but just PE. And this was the literature. And PE is proven to drive the production of prothrombin, thrombin, and fibrin, among some other things that it does, including inflammation of the heart.
So let me just sort of frame this for people. So phosphatidylethanolamine is a chemical. It's created out of cholesterol with this freezing and thawing that happens to cholesterol. It accelerates the clotting system essentially, and it inflames arteries. That's the shorthand way of saying what it does. What I'm struggling with though is what does that have to do with liquid nanoparticles?
When the lipid nanoparticles have 4 lipids that they're comprised of, and one lipid is cholesterol. The other one is, I think, an oxidized lipid, and then the pegylated, and then there's a fourth. So
how much cholesterol? So when I think about a lipid bilayer, I don't think about cholesterol. So why are they sticking cholesterol in the middle of that?
That I don't know, but it is part of the LNP that they're using.
And is there a difference? These are just what occurs to me in sort of analyzing your observations. The cholesterol in the serum is free cholesterol, although it's in chylomicrons and it's in, packages. We call those, LDLs and HDLs and VLDLs, that kind of thing. Is it that kind of a lipid nanometer packet, the cholesterol that's being created?
So the cholesterol itself is already included when they make the LNP.
But is it in the LNP lining? Like, is it in the LNP layer, or is it inside the LNP, much the way it's inside a VLDL particle, something like that?
It's part of the layer, but then it's also being found that during the freeze-thaw process, that layer is separating and degrading.
Okay, and that's how the cholesterol gets out.
Correct, but then it's sucked into the phospholipid bilayer, so it's incorporating into the cells.
No, I get that. I'm just trying to figure out how is it necessarily going through the same process that a serum cholesterol would be, but it sounds like it is. Okay, and so the theory then is it might be this freezing and thawing of the vaccine that's causing the problem? Would that be a way to summarize?
Yes, because there's another study that points to in cell.com, and it was a study that was done recently, and they actually quote Moderna in one of their supplements that also points to the freeze-thaw process and then the phospholipids degrading, but then that's also creating a toxic chemical called DSPC, which does a whole host of other nightmare things, including carcinogen, teratogens, liver damage, kidney, heart damage.
So what are we to do with this information? What do you? It seemed odd to me they wouldn't be aware of this, because right? The Moderna has to be frozen, right? The vaccine for transportation,
Correct.
Yeah. So given that they've had observations and they've looked at what happens when this is freezed and thawed, do you think they just haven't done the right studies? Do we think they're hiding something? That doesn't quite make sense to me, or they just haven't looked at it.
But they didn't look at it, possibly.
Sheesh. So what do we do? What's your recommendation? Do we present that to them, somebody, or?
That's my hope. I wasn't sure if I was going to state this publicly for safety reasons, but I've been talking to other scientists on Twitter and asked if they were on board with getting together and getting some funding for doing our own study with LNP in animals, and we wouldn't be doing it in our own lab, but because of my connections in biotech, I'd be contacting labs, and we could track LNP in the animal model, because I don't think that was done when we did cell manufacturing and protein manufacturing. I also worked with the site in Germany sometimes that did in-animal antibody discovery, where they would inject the animal with the genetic material and then track the antibodies produced. And I'm guessing, and I think it's a good guess, that that is the only thing that was done with humans.
And so you're talking about tagging the LNPs and seeing where they go, that kind of thing. And then you also had observations about the spike protein impurities itself. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. Several months ago, Jicky the mouse on Twitter, who works, I think, in microbiology, got a hold of, through the FIO or FOI release, the government in Australia released this file. There you go. Thanks.
Yeah.
An adjuvant file, and it was directly from Pfizer, from the source, from their lab, before they sent it out, that looked at the mRNA itself. And when you look at the file, there's only supposed to be, if you think of a graph, this really high peak, and it's only supposed to have one peak, and that represents the entire RNA itself. It's supposed to maintain integrity. And the file we initially looked at that I had sent you, we were worried about because there were these little peaks that were appearing before the main peak, and we wondered, what are those things? And then just a couple of days ago, Australia released more files from other batches from within their facility that shows more files that have those little smaller peaks that are appearing, but then one where they're not. And Dr. Martinson just recently did a peak prosperity a couple of days ago or yesterday, did a presentation on it. That main peak, that yes, is the RNA itself, but those smaller peaks prior to the main peak are pieces of RNA.
So Caleb, I wonder if you could maybe, since this gets a little heady here, people aren't used to talking about biochemical processes, this might get a little confusing. Maybe you can get the graphs from where the graphs sort of speak for themselves. And also maybe a little bit, I don't know if you have any diagrams about phosphatidylethylamine and, cholesterol thawing and that kind of stuff.
The graphs from her.
What's that?
She's talking about right now.
Yeah. If
yes.
At some point, if we can grab them from her, she can email them to me maybe, and then I'll send them to her. So we'll put them up.
Do that or DM them to me on Twitter.
I know. I can't understand a damn thing.
I know. What she's saying is, I'm trying to.
Can I break it down to baking terms? I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's fascinating.
Here's what it is. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Where is all this stuff coming from? And why are people having trouble? Why is there inflammation? Why is there clotting? And these are biological observations that may explain. For instance, these spike protein fragments that are improperly folded, maybe they're causing an inflammatory response. Maybe they're what's getting into the wall. Now, I asked Dr. Cole, could he find a way to stain fragments versus spike proteins? And he said he's seeing whole spike proteins in the wall. And then the question becomes, well, why do some people put it in the wall, the endothelium, and others don't seem to? And is it really a function of how much spike is being produced? I mean, something you raised before, Christy, was that the machinery is turned on so vigorously, the amount of spike protein is sort of extraordinary, right?
Correct. I know we talked about different people also having different levels of expression based on their own genetics.
Yep, that's the point. And that may be the whole issue, really. But these are heady issues, are important issues. And how long will it take you to come up with these kinds of studies, do you think? And do you want anybody to do anything? I mean, people are listening or people are watching. Is there something they can do to support you?
Financially to pay for it. We would track all the receipts, and then the scientists that I've talked to that are using their full names on Twitter, we said if there was any money left over, we would give that to the vaccine.
Is there any way you could send this stuff to the regulatory agencies and try to raise, sort of these questions with them?
That was another thought as well. Yes, but then we also have the worry that they're in bed with one another.
Well, we know the coziness is there, but I look, let's assume everyone's trying to do what's right. I think it's a reasonable assumption. Why not give them the chance, try to alert them? And by the way, if they don't respond, you'll have an interesting story later because, you could show that you tried to get them to sort of pay attention to this. You then proved it and they have egg on their face because they didn't listen to you. But I would argue that it'd be really great if you could try to get somebody over there. Maybe Paul, Susan, it seemed like Paul Alexander had more connections over there than anybody. He might not know who to send this stuff to. I don't know. We're gonna work on Kelly Victor and see if she knows who might be the right person to send this stuff to. Okay.
Sounds good. And I'm going to post, if you don't mind, Dr. Martinson on Rumble.
Okay.
He went through explaining how protein is made. He went through things really thoroughly in a 1 hour long video. I think he posted last night, so I can post that down in the spaces. He does an
Great.
amazing job, and he
Great.
goes over the files that I've been talking about. And he also uses baking references, so he tries to bring it down to street level.
Okay, good. Christy, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this. Thank you for the amount of work you've done. I know you've been slaving over this stuff. Hopefully it will help people. Hopefully it will give us some answers, right?
I hope so.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Christy.
You have a good New Year. Thank you.
You too. Happy New Year. This is how biology works. She's looking at scattergrams. She's looking at probabilities, and she's trying to figure out how these chemical pathways are sort of very complicated, and complicated things are happening to the vaccine. It's being frozen and thawed, and cholesterol is being released, and cholesterol is forming this very complex molecule called phosphatidylethanolamine, and that's known to increase the clotting system. Thrombin goes up and the clotting system is activated. So there's and this is just one possible mechanism. That's why biology is so difficult. And then she has to go in there. Oh, well, there you go. Thank you for that, Caleb. That's the word I'm saying. Phosphatidylethanolamine. There it is. And then people have to go in and formulate an experiment to try to test this. And she was telling us how she was going to do that. That's really her area of expertise. And then she has to do the experiment, and then prove that the experiment showed what she thinks it showed. That's science. That's not Dr. Fauci going, I'm science. We're talking about science right here, what Christy is doing. Okay, so let's take some calls from you guys. I know everyone is here on Spaces. Susan, was there somebody you wanted me to call up? I thought you gave me a heads up on somebody.
I'm working with somebody here who's technologically first timer. So give me a minute.
Okay. Is there somebody you wanted me to call up to the podium?
Well, let me see if I can find if he's even here first.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. Take somebody who's ready, and then I'll.
All right. Joe, who I haven't talked to in a long time. Let's get Joe Giannotti in here. Joe, how you doing?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hello, Dr. Drew.
Hey, buddy.
Happy holidays and a happy New Year to you, Susan, and Caleb.
Thank you, sir. You sound good.
Thank you. I'm pretty good. I'm doing pretty well.
Excellent.
Thanks. So I guess I want to start off. The last time we chatted was about 4 months ago, and the question you had for me then was, have you wavered any bit in that period of time from the beginning? And I told you no, but I have to tell you, I think you've wavered a little bit now.
I've moved around. I've moved around a bit. I've been moving.
Yeah, you've now moved around. Exactly.
I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find the truth. I'm trying to find my way.
Now, I have a question right off the bat for you, and then we'll talk about the Mario Nafal spaces that you have been a part of in the past week, which have been very important.
Yes.
With, of course, the first drop. But the first question I want to ask both you and Susan is, for you, what change occurred, if you're allowed to even talk about it? What change did occur, or you felt when you were on Special Forces? Because clearly, since you were in Special Forces, I noticed a change.
Oh, really? Is that right? Well, it's hysterical.
He's not so whiny anymore.
I'm not so whiny anymore. I realized I was in sort of denial about my age. And I realized, I thought I was just whiny about my age. I thought I was feeling like fatigued and tired and weak. And I realized, I'm just not accepting my age. And Special Forces pushed my face to the mirror on that one. So I know exactly what my limitations are.
You were afraid
I know exactly, and I'm good with what I've got.
You're
really
afraid
good
to
with
get surgery, and you weren't going to go do it.
Yes, that's right.
And then you came back and said, okay, I'm going to do it because I don't want to feel like this anymore.
And then they told me no, and they
but they gave you a new protocol.
Yeah, and they
went to the right guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Good medicine.
I learned that from Joe Giannotti. And to go to the right doctor.
Thank you. Yes, and that's what I've done.
And I think you're maybe alluding to me feeling a little more assertive or more courageous or something, or using the word courage certainly more than I was before.
Definitely.
There's something there that I've at least realized that word is very important right now. And certainly I was inspired by the Navy SEALs that were training us, and I was inspired by my peers. Wait do you see, Joe's talking about this show I'm on next Wednesday on Fox Network. I think it's 8:00 Wednesday.
How many episodes?
I believe there are
10?
10 episodes, 8 or
Eight?
10. The first one is this 2-hour special. The first one, all the people that were there with me, we couldn't figure out. So much happened the first day. We couldn't figure out how they were going to do it. We thought they're going to take 3 episodes to do the first day, and they're doing a 2-hour special. That makes sense now.
Yeah. Well,
and
there was 19 people, right?
16,
So
16.
16. So there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and we get our ass handed to us. Anyway, the behavior of how tough they were inspired me too. So yeah, that's interesting, Joe. I thank you for pointing that out.
You're very welcome. And the reason why I'm most interested in watching you over the other 15, not because I have a bias, but because you're 63 years old.
That's right. I'm the oldest one there by far.
By far.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Piazza is in his early 50s.
Yes, and Piazza's a professional athlete. I'm not a professional athlete. All these guys are professional athletes and Olympians and stuff. It's comical when you say it out loud.
Except for Scaramucci.
Scaramucci was my closest
But he's
peer.
a stud.
Scaramucci does very well.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But when the first day when he got there, he goes, I felt so much relief when I heard you were going to be old man, when you were going to be here. Now I felt like I belong here. So I thought, all right.
But Susan, was it just that Drew complains less? Is that the only thing? I mean, there has to be more.
Well, he just got really sad that he was sick. Like he was sick a lot. But he was like in denial that, like I kept saying, well, why don't you, are you going to go get the surgery? What are you going to do? And he's like, no. And then he found out about this and he started working out really heavily, and suddenly the diverticulitis went away and he was fine. And then, but when his face was pushed against the glass about his longevity, he said, you know what, I got to take care of this. Like, I don't want to.
No, it was not about longevity. It was more about, I came out of the desert more about taking care of business. It's just take care of it.
You weren't afraid.
No fear. Yeah. I think that's what Joe's saying. I didn't realize it, but I think Joe's right. I had less fear-based.
But also like being trapped with your wife for 3 years in a house and having to live,
God, oh my God,
took
what
care
a
of
nightmare.
everything for you, and I would like bring you, rub your feet when you didn't feel good. You need to
Who
go
was
out
rubbing
and get your
whose
ass
feet?
kicked.
Who was rubbing whose feet? I don't remember ever having my feet rubbed, and
You
I
don't
remember
like it.
nightly rubbing your feet.
Drew, do you want me to be more graphic, or should I just say what I was rubbing?
So okay, feet rubbing is a metaphor. Okay,
Oh,
that's what you call for no Trump.
very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
But let's transition.
I
now
love you.
to-
I love you too. I
know.
love taking care of you, and we took care of each other.
Yeah.
But
What's
it
that,
was
Joe?
a different situation.
I said that's a great way to transition into the Twitter Spaces that
Oh yeah.
of the past week. And of course, we're going to see more drops coming.
Yeah.
And let's just talk about right now what has come out and the spaces that you kind of pretty much moderated with Mario Nafal. There's one person I highly recommend that you should have on as a guest.
Okay.
I think Sabine Hazen's outstanding.
Well, Sabine was there for a few minutes, and I've had her on my HLN. Oh, on here, sure, we'll have Sabine for sure. I'm going to get a bunch of those physicians up over here. A lot of the people that were on the first from the day before, I'm going to get some of them over here, and then some of the ones that I moderated. And Nafal did ask me to moderate them, so I was moderating.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
And yeah, Sabine is great. Sabine was on my HLM program back in the day. We were sort of, we were looking at Michael Jackson's demise, and we were both like, how he had an anesthesia cart in his bed. How crazy is that? And I guess it was actually the trial of Conrad Murray that we were commenting on at the time. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was the first time I'd spoken to peers, other physicians with very differing opinions. Lo and behold, what you discover is we agree on about 85% of stuff, which I knew we would, that we all put the care of the patient in front of us ahead of everything else. And we are trying to use our judgment, not just the data. What you heard there in that conversation was how each of us was using our experience to analyze the data, how measuring our experience against the data. And we came up with different things. We came up with different ideas. We weren't off in two different worlds. We were off by 15%, 20%, and somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong. But impossible to tell who that's going to be right now. It is really
and we
hard
may
to
not
tell.
know that for decades.
Maybe. I feel like we're going to know sooner than later, sort of directionally what's up. In other words, for instance, Joe, the fact that we have not been allowed to raise any issues, this is what kills me. So we rushed the vaccine out. I get it. We rushed it. It was an emergency. We cut corners. We did things we wouldn't otherwise do. We brought this thing out. People want to call it experimental. Call it what you will. We cut corners and didn't go through the usual procedures. Nobody disagrees with that. And I fully endorse that we did that. I think it was the right thing to do. Even if it turns out to have been wrong, I still think it was the right thing to do without the benefit of, we were in the middle of a pandemic. We didn't know where this was going. So I think we did the right thing, even if it turns out to have been problematic.
I think the life lesson from all of this at the end of the day, is you cannot speed science.
Well, but you can though, Joe. But it's risky. You take risk.
I totally disagree.
Well, you take risk. You take risk. But here's my question. Yes. Here's my question. Is to your point, which is, so now why is it absolutely sacrilegious and anathema to say, hey, why don't we fill in with the usual research that we would normally have done? Why don't we get that done now to answer some of these questions that people are raising about younger males and vaccine and this kind of stuff? Let's get that research done. You get crushed as being an anti-vaxxer for just raising that question. And to me, that's the weird. What is wrong with us? And by the way, how we normally do things. What normally happens when a new medication is rolled out, we see the data, we look at it, we study it, and then we have our clinical experience. And the clinical experience is often different than what the data is. Then we go back and reanalyze the drug in a wider distribution and look at what we were observing clinically and try to explain why that is the case. And then we use the drug better. That's it. That's the process. That's the way we've always done it.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. However, you could also, what you just said, you could also talk about in reference to treatment, because treatment the entire time, and of course, the last week I've been thinking a lot about, our late friend Dr. Zelenko, and you could use exactly what you talked about in reference to vaccination.
Well, I would argue, yes, you're correct,
thinking
Joe.
Outside the box.
No, you're correct that so-called early treatment early in the pandemic should have been evaluated that way, the way we always do it. You do something clinically, then you go back and look at the research and you do more research to try to buttress the clinical observations or perhaps undermine what we think we're observing. Whatever it is, we need to do more of that. I completely agree. And the fact that we're not rushing to explain things like increased in overall mortality is just weird, very weird. By the way, you may want to check out Dr. John Campbell again. People are weirdly attacking him all of a sudden. He is a PhD nurse. His doctorate is a PhD. He's not an MD, but he's a nurse educator. He's the perfect person to do the kinds of pods he does, where he's taking the data very dispassionately, going through it, and then trying to make it digestible for people. That is nursing, by the way. That's one of their main functions, is education of the patient, right? And so I admire everything he's doing. He's recently put something up about China and their current massive wave of COVID. And he thinks that the death data is being grossly underreported. And he thinks that the case rates are being grossly underreported. It's going to take about 2 months to essentially go through 1.2 billion people. And there's nothing they can do about it, that their vaccine may be more effective than we know, and that our press seems to be hell-bent, as always, on making it seem worse than it is. It's not going to be that bad. And all the variants thus far are of BA.5. And so there's tons of cross immunity with the immunity we have from Omicron BA.5. So there appears to be very little concern created by the pandemic sweeping China right now, though virologists will remain concerned because that's their job. Their job is to go and take a careful look at what the risks are and how this thing is evolving, and are we going to get any problematic variants or likely to get any problematic variants. Presently, it does not appear to be the case, and the press should shut the hell up, which is something I've been saying since the beginning of this pandemic. I'm going to take a little break, and then we will come back with more calls. Want to give the gift that keeps on giving? Genucel Skincare keeps everyone on your holiday list looking young and refreshed. And who doesn't need that type of luxury, especially over the holiday season? Genucel has so many products that Susan and I love. Genucel's XV Moisturizer locks in moisturizer on top of the serums, making dry spots a thing of the past, especially great with the colder climate and all the dryness of our skin, right? And with Genucel's Immediate Effect 2 eye cream, you can see the results in as little as 12 hours. Guaranteed or your money back. Susan loves Genucel's DFS Vitamin C Serum, the new Deep Firming Serum, as well as the Hyaluronic with C and lactic acid, which hydrates your skin and makes fine lines a thing of the past while hopefully preventing future wrinkles from forming.
I am a snob when it comes to using products on my face. The dermatologist makes a ton of money from me. But when I was introduced to Genucel, I was so happy because it's so affordable and it works great. I was introduced to the Ultra Retinol Cream, which I love at night. All the eye creams are amazing. People notice my skin all the time, and I'm so excited because it's actually working.
Take advantage of amazing holiday savings by going to Genucel.com, and you will get 60% off with a special holiday stocking stuffer when you subscribe to My Favorites package at Genucel.com/Drew, and all orders are upgraded to free shipping for the rest of the holiday season. We will get it there quickly. Use code Drew at checkout for an extra 10% off your entire order. That is Genucel.com/Drew, GENUCEL.com/Drew. My guest is Philip Patrick. He is a precious metal specialist, trains at University of Redlands. He has spent years as a wealth manager at Citigroup, and his current position is with Birch Gold Group. So gold has always been somewhat of a safe haven, particularly in times of great turmoil, much like our present moment, I imagine.
Gold has always traditionally been a safe haven asset. Gold specifically has always been about wealth preservation, right? Gold has always held its buying power. You can look at as far back as you like in history. In biblical times, 1 ounce of gold would buy somebody 400 loaves of bread. And today it does the same thing. So it's a store of value. But I would say in times like this, as you mentioned, it's particularly important when you're dealing with things like 40-year high inflation, the air that's coming out of a stock market bubble. These times in particular tend to drive gold and silver up quite significantly. If things are different, the solution needs to be different as well. So I encourage everyone to get informed, and we have a lot of good information here to help your listeners.
Just a reminder, I am not a financial advisor, and I do not give out financial advice nor investing advice. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, and thousands of satisfied customers. Check them out now. Visit birchgold.com/Drew and secure your future with gold. Do it now. So Susan has been receiving all these accolades for her selling prowess over at Genucel because people are seeing her testimonial, and I want to get more product when I see it. But well, I don't think. Can I hear you? Is your mic on?
I ran out of the vitamin C. I've got to get some more. But I believe in the product, and I've saved a lot of money at the dermatologist, and she's not buying a jet this year.
And I'm so excited.
Also, yeah, you're excited, and
I'm so excited.
Also, they're going to be our sponsor this year, so everybody keep supporting it so we can keep the show afloat.
Yes, thank you for that. We appreciate
all of our sponsors.
What was the other thing? Oh, yeah. So I was thinking about Susan and her rendering of foot rubs to me, and I started thinking about the biblical references to washing of feet. When Noah came back, they washed his feet, and that's a similar allusion to what Susan was causing us to think about.
But Drew gives me a foot rub every day.
That's true.
So I have to pay him back.
All right. So let's get to some calls here. We got this is
TMI, Caleb.
Whatever's. This is Sami. I'm gonna get. Sami.
And also Christina P is on this week's Dr. Drew After Dark.
Yes, so Christina P and I are reunited. Sami, unmute yourself, and what we got?
Hey, my name is actually Andrea, but of course the internet. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
And mom genes have to represent that.
Keep high and tight.
High and tight. I won't go into any grossness because I have my baby here. So I have I was listening to the pod you guys had with Dr. Nassim.
Yep.
And one thing that kind of piqued my interest, and it's actually kind of made me a little bit frustrated, is the access. When you guys were talking about having informed consent.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
This is a really weird thing. I really would like people to really talk more about that, because I don't know if doctors kind of forget that your patients are not doctors. We get information from you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when we ask questions, we have to get them from somewhere. So during the pandemic, when I was, I have a bunch of kids and I'm concerned and I start asking questions to my doctors, they're busy. It's their job. And they keep saying, I shouldn't believe everything I read on the internet. I'm like, yeah, well, that's why I'm asking,
Right.
asking you guys
That's
for
right.
like help. So
Yeah.
I don't know the questions I start asking, and they seem to get like really agitated because, between nurse practitioners and everything, it's like, why are you even asking me? Why don't you just believe me?
Mm.
So it's hard, especially when you start asking questions and then people look at you like you're some kind of like vaccine denier. And I'm like,
Right.
I just want to ask a question.
Yes. Yes.
I have boys. A friend of mine's son recently died over the summer.
Mm.
He was at soccer camp. He was 16. He had to be vaccinated because we live in New York, and he had to be vaccinated. And he had a heart attack at camp because he couldn't. They had to participate.
It's awful. Awful.
I'm not saying that that's a case of it, but it's a concern as a parent.
Correct.
When you bring it up, and it's like, well, why are you believing everything you're reading on the internet? And
They
like,
said that in response to you reporting a proximal case, that you had something near you happen, and they said that's the internet. You know what I mean?
When I told them that a friend of mine, close friend of mine, son died of a heart attack at 16, he had recently gotten the shot within like 3 months, and he was exerting himself at summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking those situations. I'm like, they said specifically 16-year-old kids, boys, he fit like everything, high cardiac rate, he's running around all day. It's summer.
So here's
things.
you're 1000% correct that we are not doing informed consent properly. Even and people run busy practices, and I know it's hard to take the time to do the consent, and I understand what you're running into, and it's a shame that that's the case. But even if we took the time to give you consent, a lot of what we would have to tell you would be conjecture and not certain and unclear. CDC says one thing, and by the way, as of tomorrow in California, because of a law called AB 2098, you technically are not even allowed to discuss some of the concerns that prevent us from giving you full informed consent. It's pretty crazy. I mean, let's you and I go through it. Here's how I'd approach it. So we are seeing increase in excess mortality in Western countries. There's no doubt about that. There's just no doubt. There are people that believe that may be related to the vaccine, and they have some decent data to suggest that. There are people that believe it's all due to COVID, and there's some decent data to suggest that. And there is nobody yet that has teased out what is contributed by the lockdown or what could be COVID plus vaccine, which is essentially everybody, right? We've all had COVID now, and we're getting the vaccine. So how do you know what is causing what? They've done almost nothing to sort that out. So when you see a signal like 15 to 30-year-olds having increase in something, whether it's myocarditis, which is why, in the Twitter spaces I was in, I really focused it on myocarditis because there's a lot of data there. That's the one we can kind of look at. And the argument then becomes, well, is it less risky or more risky than COVID itself for that age group? And to those of us that are internists, it's really easy to say that kids are almost no risk. I mean, almost no risk, but they do get sick sometimes, very rarely. And it appears that this risk of myocarditis is around 1 in 300 to 1 in 2,000, something like that. And it appears to be self-limited. But there have been cases like you've heard here where people are getting strokes and heart attacks and other cardiovascular complications. We don't know at what rate yet. And we don't know if it's across all ages or if it's somehow more risky in the young males. The signal seems to be showing up in the young males, and it seems to be showing up around the Moderna vaccine, which is a higher dose vaccine. So you might want to get the Pfizer vaccine, or you might want to get the Novavax vaccine. These are the kinds of things that somebody should be helping you sort of work through. or no
Right.
vaccine if you're really worried. It's up to you. Yes, vaccine, no vaccine. Should be making that decision with your doctor. And it's not
Right.
it's easier. So when I do conformed consent to a 75-year-old, I go, hey, look, we all know this thing devastates people who are older. There's no doubt about that. I've seen no real significant side effects from the vaccine. It can be harder to see the side effects in older people because older people get all kinds of things. So it's hard to know what's vaccine and what's just being old. But my impression is it really is the risk reward definitely comes down on the side of taking it when you're older.
Right.
Even if there are adverse events, I still think it's, I may be wrong, by the way, totally prepared to be wrong, but I still think that risk reward. But when you get younger, it just gets just completely confusing to me. And I'd have to admit that to you as part of informed consent.
And that's what's difficult as a patient, because I do understand I'm not a doctor and I'm trying to go to a clinician, like a clinician who's a family practice. This is, not surgery, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that they have certain demands that I don't want to take away from them at all, because as the doctor, there are certain things that governmental overreach that you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
There are everything like, I asked my doctor a while ago what he does all the time in his office. He's like, paperwork. Yeah, just lots and lots of paperwork.
Yeah.
So I understand that. But then you put it all together and it's like, okay, I'm in there. I feel like I'm taking up your time. My son is going to college, his first year, his freshman year this year. I'm asking questions and I'm being told that everything is safe and I should, just do whatever. But in reality, I wanted to find out in New York, you have to, like, every college student has to be vaccinated.
Well, that's so now you're into a whole other sphere here, right? Which is this idea of mandates. Mandates of is if you should follow Vinay Prasad, Vinay Prasad, Prasad, who really has been railing on this one. He's like, there's just no science to substantiate the mandate in a population that has essentially no risk from the illness. It's weird. I keep worrying that because I'm not a pediatrician, I don't understand the risk tolerance of a pediatrician to caring. In caring for the elderly, people get sick and die, and you're kind of used to it. But pediatricians never see people die. They just thank God. It's the fact that somebody died of COVID is shattering to them, and then they kind of get scared, and maybe they're not assessing the vaccine. I don't know. It's very confusing to me.
There is the very early pandemic. We were doing other work. With my business, and we were talking to very different ranges of people. A few of them were pharmacists.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, so really tell me about this. And this is during lockdown, June.
Yeah.
And they were the first ones who were like getting kind of like tipping, like, listen, you didn't hear it from me, but kind of a thing.
I know that's still going on. People are still afraid to speak up. It's still going on.
And they're saying that they were allowed to fill certain things.
Yep.
That doctors are not allowed to do certain things. So for COVID in particular, that's why I was saying informed consent. It's a tricky one with this because it's a lot of things. There's a lot of people watching, a lot of us and doctors and people who fill it. So it's one of those things where, okay, great. Well, then how do you become informed? Even when we finally settled on the Johnson & Johnson, we got the J&J for my son because it seemed like the least risk.
I think that's true. I think you chose the right one. I think that's true.
That's basically what's happening because I was doing a lot of legwork and listened to you guys and a lot of different people. Because
but think about it, that one's been for the 50 cases or whatever in women, been taken off the market.
Right.
Been taken off the market. Yet the mRNA vaccines, we're not even allowed to talk about it. Not allowed to ask.
Right. So that was the whole thing. So it was a lot of different things. I had the only resource I did have was the internet. I definitely appreciate, you, Dr. Drew, people who have changed their mind, who have actually gone through it, looked at everything, and are like on the fence, and they're very open about, listen, I'm on the fence. I'm fine with that. I think most people are fine with being on the fence.
Sure.
It's just we need to have the conversation or have the ability to have
when we give you a vaccine, we're supposed to make you sign an informed consent form. How many people signed that form that got the vaccine? 1%, maybe? 0.5%?
Dr. Drew, I made my son read that.
Yeah.
He's 18 years old. I made him read it. The pharmacist at our Walgreens was sitting there
Good.
watching. Why are
Good.
you doing? And he read the whole thing. And I said, do you understand what this means? And we went through the whole thing.
Are you a lawyer?
The pharmacist was like, no,
You
I'm a
should be.
mom.
You should be a
And I
lawyer.
was
Moms, yeah, you're right. Moms are way more guarded than lawyers.
Almost the same
And it was
thing now.
because
Yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah, I know.
well, ultimately it's because every mom knows, and dad as well, you know, the buck stops with you.
Yep.
And they've already said flat out, if something happens, no one's on the hook for this. No one's on the hook for it.
I know.
I appreciate the conversation, having the space to have the conversation. It was just, how do we get to that conversation? And without like looking like we're crazy, but I think ultimately you just have to look like you're crazy, because that's what I ended up having to do. So.
You do, and
You had to go all Karen on everybody.
no, you don't have to go Karen, but you have to.
Karen.
It's how many times,
Yeah.
you know, and many of these conversations I've been having with my peers, they'll open with, you don't have to put on your foil hat. It's like, because people think that's what you're doing, and we're just doing what we always do, and to just ask questions should be it should be a carefully guarded privilege for all patients. So thank you for
So I appreciate again, and I'm just wanted to can you just make sure you summarize, like, again, how do you make sure you can do the informed consent? You just make sure you just keep plugging away,
you
kind
keep
of a
plugging,
thing.
you read the consents that you do have, you keep asking questions. I don't, it's a little, let me think of a strategy that would work better than anything. You know, if you
Because it's also
think about it
too,
before
like
you get in there. Yeah, think about it before you get in there and go, look, here's what I have seen. Maybe even write it down. Just go, these are the things that I've been reading about lately, not on the internet. These are just things that have been reported. And I'm worried about the risk reward. That's all. I'm worried that the risk reward is not there. How can you consent me in such a way that helps me understand why the risk reward goes the way you are recommending? Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much,
All right.
Dr. Drew. And
All right.
I will never, but I won't do the up in the. I just listened to you guys, you and Christina, which is magic. Love it always. And I was making sure I didn't go up at the end instead of doing that. I made sure I said everything with a very going down.
Very well done. Very good. I'm going to go back on. I'm going to go back on where my mom's at. In a couple of weeks, actually. I don't know when they'll air it, but we have a whole other topic planned, so we're going to do it there. So look for that there.
Well, awesome. Keep it high and tight, and have a great happy New Year.
Thank you, Andrew. Happy New Year. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for advocating for your kids. Thank you for keeping medicine sort of straight the way it's supposed to be practiced. We really appreciate it. Let's get Justin up here. Hi, Justin. And thank you for your service. He's a veteran. Justin, we're not hearing you for some reason. Justin?
It's connecting.
I'm gonna have to. Okay, it's taking time. I always hate to pull people down if it's the glitch on the Twitter Spaces. Got a lot of people requesting. I'm trying to get to people.
Yeah, you might want to try and bring
Fred
him up.
Stoller tried to get on. We couldn't see his avatar. It was so weird.
Just I can only go for so long that I get somebody else up here. I saw Alana wanted to come up. Where'd she go? Did you see Alana in there asking to come up? Sorry that this is a little bit cumbersome, but this is the nature of Twitter.
I see her. I'll put her up.
Okay, good. Thank you. Here she comes. Or I don't know if you were requested and you decided against it, Alana. I don't know. There you are. What's going on?
Hi,
Hey.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And I'm very, very excited to watch you on Special Forces.
It's
so,
pretty intense. Pretty intense.
Yes, I'm very, very, it's DVR'd. I'm just anxiously awaiting. Anyway, my I know. My question is, and this is a worried mom question.
Okay. All right.
So with all of the, heart issues, cardiac issues that are coming up from people, whether they were vaccinated, and or have COVID,
Mm-hmm.
had COVID,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do to prevent any of these coming if you've had COVID and or have been
You know what,
vaccinated?
Alana? That is really a good question, and that should be priority one. Priority two. One should be explaining what's going on. Priority two should be trying to help people mitigate the risk. And I've been thinking about it, and I'm not sure I know what's right. If it is something like the cholesterol alteration we were talking about earlier with Christy,
Mm-hmm.
aspirin would be helpful, like
Okay.
like a small dose aspirin. And I've kind of thought that might be the kind of thing that people ought to think about. We've not been seeing hemorrhagic strokes, which is the thing that the aspirin makes worse. Nor have, I think the resistance to making the recommendation of aspirin per se is hearkening back to the Johnson and Johnson side effects, which was a consumptive coagulopathy, which can have more problems when you take aspirin sometimes. So I think there must be some worry that maybe some component of that is causing some of these side effects as well. I don't think so. I think this is something really more about activated clotting from the endothelial injury, something like that. And that should be better with aspirin. So that's kind of where my head's at. Plus,
do you think, I was going to say,
plus, if you get palpitations, get them evaluated immediately. That palpitations are, back, 3 years ago, somebody came with palpitations, you'd pat them on the back of the hand and go, oh, you're going to be fine. You have a normal heart. Don't worry about it, right? A palpitations in a normal heart is a nothing. It is no longer that world. People are having dysautonomias where they're passing out. Some of that may be related to these rhythm disturbances. And there is worry that there's scarring and inflammation of the heart itself. So it's no longer a normal heart with a rhythm problem. So it is very significant that people, if they get here, particularly rapid rhythm. So rapid or irregular rhythm. So or immediately get that evaluated.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Got it. That was sort of my only,
I know it makes me shake my head that it's the same thing. I'm having the same reaction I had when public health. Here we go. This is Caleb putting me keeping me honest by putting the definitions of what I'm talking about up on the screen. But it makes me shake my head like I did when the public health community was not helping people understand how to treat COVID with monoclonal antibodies. People should have been demanding monoclonal antibodies as soon as they got a fever or as soon as they got a positive test, at least. And no one knew to do that. And this feels to me like the same kind of nonsense. So weird, so irresponsible. Ugh. Okay, let's get Giuseppe up here. Oof. It really concerns me. Really weird to me. Giuseppe, what's going on there, my friend? Again, the men don't seem to be able to find their way to the stage here. It's no fault of theirs. They're doing. I mean, you can see he's unmuted himself. He's ready to go.
A sexist would say.
Yes, thank you. All right, we'll have to give somebody else a turn. Sorry, Giuseppe. This is.
Gotta be quick on the unmute.
Yeah, I'm. Hold on here. Oh my goodness. I wonder if there are any other physicians in here. We did have some other doctors ready to go. That was
Fred Stoller signed up for Twitter and he was on it. He could show me the picture of him being on the Twitter Spaces, but we couldn't see him.
He's not on this one.
No, he left. He said, "Sorry, I couldn't figure," because I kept looking for him and I couldn't see it. It was just a purple F and it didn't pop up. Some glitch.
Garrett, what's going on?
Hey, Dr. Drew. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Fan of the show. I have a question for you. It's a little bit off topic from what's been discussed so far, but I think this is still,
I love it.
Yeah, this is still in your wheelhouse. I've seen anecdotally people describing decrease in cravings for alcohol if they're using a GLP-1 agonist. So it's kind of a three-pronged question. Have you sort of seen this in your own practice? Is there any sort of research out there that can verify that? And do you think that GLP-1 agonists have any future in addiction medicine?
I am certain somebody's doing that research. I have not seen it myself, but I've heard it talked about quite a bit. So I guarantee you they're already on that. I don't know where. I haven't read any studies. I haven't seen any preprints, but I know addiction medicine, how it works. They jump on stuff like this. So there will be some interesting stuff. And I bet it works. I do bet it works. I bet it does something. Now, this is kind of an interesting zone in addiction medicine, which is, what are your goals of treatment? Are you trying to get people to cut down, or are you trying to get them to stop? What are your endpoints? And it's pretty clear something like this would get people to cut down, and that might take somebody from advanced liver disease to mild liver disease. That's a significant medical thing. But in terms of thriving, we want them to stop. And I don't know whether this is going to affect stopping or not, but sometimes the things that affect the desire to use do affect it, like Vivitrol and that kind of stuff. That clearly is in that same zone. So my prediction will be able to have some utility. That's my prediction.
Okay, right on.
Interesting. Good question. Thank you, my friend.
I might throw in a...
Whoop, I got you. I unfortunately clicked you off because I'm trying to get to more people. I'm sorry. This is Anne. Anne, go at it here. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to get to as many people as I possibly can for the New Year show here. Anne, are you there, Anne? She's still connecting. There you are.
Hello?
Hi, Anne. Is it Anne? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for taking the call here. I want to be totally honest. I'm brand new to you. I'd never heard of you. The first time was yesterday or the day before on a Twitter space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of new to Twitter space.
Cool.
Or to Twitter. I
Great.
joined in 2021 just to follow some people who are reporting on the COVID vaccine. But I found you to be very thoughtful and very reasonable. So when I saw this come up today, I thought, oh, it'd be interesting to hear what he has to say. But here's my question. I'm 60 years old. I'm a mom of 8 children, 18 to 30.
God bless you.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah.
My background is not in medicine. I'm a UW grad in marketing and psychology. How about that? I double majored, selling things to people that they don't need, right? But that was many years ago. But at any rate, because I am a mom of 8 children and have gone through different health things, and the number one thing that a parent can have is a good doctor that listens. And is willing to work with you. Yep. I've been involved with the vaccine conversation for over 30 years. Primarily, my focus has been on informed consent and just medical choice, that people should always have a choice.
Always.
Anyway, so when the COVID vaccine started coming out, I have a blog. I have a website. I don't sell anything. And I'm not selling anything here. I just had a website where we share, other moms and I share information on it. Let's just say that. And I have a podcast and whatnot. And it's just local and no big deal. And I'm just an ordinary person. So anyway, I see these injuries coming up and I'm like, and then they're being censored, or these people are saying they're false and they're this or that. And then I start posting these things, and then anything I post gets taken off YouTube and then off Vimeo and then off TikTok. And anyway, so all this censorship. And then I become friends with Bree Dressen, who is the co-founder of React 19. Are you familiar with React 19?
No, but I think I've heard the name.
Okay, so React. Okay, I was thinking I was gonna have to jump off here, but I was gonna post in the chat, and I will before I get off. But anyway. So Brianne, injured in the vaccine trials, along with many others, and Joel Walskog, who is a orthopedic surgeon, performs 5,000 surgeries a year. Anyway, they started React 19. They've been part of Ron Johnson's press conferences and whatnot. They started React 19, and it's all for the vaccine injured and advocating for the vaccine injured. I'm gonna put a link in the chat here. But her and I have gotten to be friends over the last year and a half. And as she's walking through, so she's had direct conversations. So she has been in the secret trials, and this is all legit. I'm not making anything up here. You can Google her, React 19. She's been in the secret trials that the NIH held on the vaccine injured. She's had she's had direct communication with Janet Woodcock, Peter Marks. They've gone back and forth, and they're literally, the NIH is literally keeping this information from the public. Right. And so all of this, what I'm asking you as a doctor, when is this get recognized. I mean, these people have been treated so unconscionably cruel, so silenced, so abandoned. People who are injured can't go into the ER. They're told they're crazy. Oh, well, you're making this up. It can't because the CDC hasn't told us that this can happen. So they're just totally discarded. They've been living in absolute hell. There's a whole segment of people who've committed suicide because they haven't been able to get help.
So are you specifically talking about these people that get sort of long haul type symptoms from the vaccine?
No, I'm talking about people who get myocarditis, people like Maddie DeGarry, who 13 years old, she was in the trial. She can't walk. These people can't walk. They have that, and they're shaking nonstop.
So here's where I kind of go with this, which is there's no doubt it's causing myocarditis. It is. It just is. The question is at what rate relative to what risk from the COVID itself. And is it the vaccine plus COVID or is it just the vaccine? It's very hard to sort that out right now. And could COVID do the same thing? Therefore, is it worth the risk of the vaccine? These are questions that are not being properly answered. It's interesting to me. And by the way, I've seen a lot of long COVID types of symptoms from COVID too. Some friends have really just lives turned upside down by getting the vaccine. I would call, if any of you are listening and have long COVID from the vaccine, check out covidlonghaulers.com. They're trying to do the research there to figure out what's going on. They've got some pretty good results, covidlonghaulers.com. But if you have other injuries like myocarditis, I would urge people to stop talking about it being mild. Myocarditis is a serious illness. It's a dangerous illness. And maybe it's milder than most of the viral myocarditis we see, but it is still a serious illness. And for some people, disabling. No doubt. It's interesting to me, though, when I brought it up the other day to the Twitter spaces that you were listening to, I don't think I could even get anybody to agree that the vaccine could even kill somebody. Like they were not willing to even entertain the possibility. And I think that shows you how close-minded people are, because it's pretty clear it can. The question is what rate versus what risk from COVID. That's the only question we have to answer. But there is such blinders on right now, as you're saying, in terms of what the NIH is doing and when they're going to publicly disclose. I don't know. I don't know. So much of this is deeply confusing to me. I don't believe there are bad people operating here. I think there are people making bad calls, and something is up. Something is just not right in all of this. People that are less charitable than myself will say that they are in a rush to get this vaccine put on the children's mandatory schedule with measles and everything else, because then they have permanent protection from liability. And it may be true that maybe that's then when they're going to come out with the data. They're waiting to first get it on the vaccine schedule for children, and then they will tell us what they've been finding. That to me seems fairly unconscionable, but maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. What do you think? Are you there? You have to unmute. There you are. Anne, if you're speaking to a closed microphone. Your microphone is off. You have to reach down that lower left-hand corner and unmute.
Oh,
there you
sorry.
are.
Yeah. No, well, like I said, I've been following this very very closely,
but
especially with my connection with Bree.
you're getting anecdotes, right? You're getting the horror stories that happen. They just do. The question is at what rate and what risk relative to COVID itself, and is it contributed to by COVID?
But it's not just the horror stories, because if you look at, I would say, so are you familiar with Pierre Corey?
Very. I've talked to many times. Ooh,
okay.
Go ahead.
So I would credit Pierre Corey for potentially saving my life, and the fact that I got COVID in 2020. Okay. And again, as a mom whose children have gone through different various health things, constantly researching, different things, all these things. And I was researching on treatments, and I came across his first Senate testimony that he did in Wisconsin, before he went in December. And he was talking about corticosteroids and the use of that. And I went to the doctor, and the treatment then was, oh, well, yes, you have it. There's nothing we can do. Come back basically in 2 weeks if anything goes wrong.
That to me was one of the most astonishing moments in American medical history. Come back when you can't breathe. Okay, is startling to me.
Well, let me tell you what happened. So then it's like 9 days later. So I'm at like day 17. And I'm like, and I'm relatively healthy, you know. I mean, yes, for being my age and everything else, I'm relatively healthy. And I just couldn't breathe. I mean, I felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest.
boy.
And I went in
Yeah.
on one day. I went to 3 different doctors. I called the first doctor back, and they're like, well, and I'm like, I would really like to try corticosteroids. And I'm like, nope, we can't do that. That's not, you know. Went into like a ready med kind of thing. Nope, can't do it. Well, finally, I went to the Parkview. Well, that doesn't mean anything to you. And I went to doctor, and they were about to close, and I pled my case, and he said no. And then I told him the story about how my daughter at one point, she started having, this will make sense in a minute, started having nonstop seizures. You know, we were at the clinic. No one in the world could help her. And lo and behold, long story short, I end up stopping those she was seizing every 5 minutes. And I just find a way through diet, not through anything else, that stopped through the keto diets. And she has, she stopped her seizures, never had another one again, and that was 10 years ago. Okay, but that particular hospital hired a keto dietitian because of what happened with me and my daughter.
Okay.
And so I explained that to him, and I said to this doctor in the ER, or at this medical facility, I said, please listen to me. I feel like you're not listening. And I said, this is what happened with my daughter. Your facility here, which is the biggest facility in our area, has hired. This is what happened.
Yep.
I'm not somebody who doesn't know anything. And he's like, fine, I'll give it to you because you're demanding it, but not because it'll do you any good. That's what he told me. That is exactly what that doctor told me. Yeah. I went to the pharmacist, the pharmacy. I took my first dose in, and within 24 hours, not even the next morning, because it was 8:00 at night, I was so much better. Now, what would have happened to me had I not? I knew how to advocate. I know the system. I know you have to advocate. People have to know how to advocate. They have to know that doctors have to have their own protocols. And it is my understanding that the reason people couldn't get ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or any of these other things were because the hospitals had to stay with what Medicare and Medicaid would pay for.
No, it's not that. It was even more.
Were prescribed.
It was even worse. It was the hospitals decided they knew what was best.
More egregious than that.
And they were going to fire doctors that, God forbid, gave anything other than the protocols that they approved. This whole what has happened. We've learned lots of things about medicine in this pandemic, and one is the hijacking of evidence-based medicine. Evidence-based medicine is a guideline. It's not a just saith the Lord. And to have these authorities and these centralized authorities dictating what doctors do with their patients is disgusting. And that's why doctors froze. They were scared of losing their job. Most doctors are now employees. That guy in the ER is an employee.
Well, that's what happened. What happened to my brother-in-law? He's a neonatologist. He's like 60. God, she's 66 now, and he, out in California. And he was prescribing some of these medications, and the hospital came to him and said, you need to stop, or we're going to have to let you go.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean,
that's the way it goes. This is
years?
disgusting, and I don't know what we do about it. But I was saying to the Twitter space that you heard me in the other day that we need to regain control of our profession. I mean, physicians need to get together and demand that we're back in control of our. We are the only ones that actually have one priority, and that's the patient. We're the only ones. That's it. The patient in front of us. That's all we're concerned with, and everything should be about that. The hospitals, all the protocols and things. That's completely. It's 10 miles away from the actual doctor-patient care. But Ann, I'm going to keep moving on here. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for the comment. And you should have been given steroids. In fact, should have been given Decadron.
Yep, thank you.
Should have been given Decadron. And whether or not you were having and people would argue this could have been an exacerbation of some airway disease or something else not related to COVID. Yeah, it still would get better with steroids and almost zero risk. Where is the risk-reward analysis in medicine anymore? There's almost no risk to giving Ann steroids when she comes in there. Give her tapering steroids over 5 days or 6 days. Big deal. You know way you're going to hurt anything in doing that. It might really improve things. I get very upset about this. It's just so disgusting.
How you feeling?
Oh, Sabine is here. I'm going to get her on here a second. Wish Chris Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's, guys.
Hey,
Hey.
Queen Mother.
What's up?
Oh, God. Well, on a funny note, one of my kids just dropped the whole gingerbread house on the floor.
Fantastic.
While I was
Congratulations.
waiting. Yeah, it's the holiday season. So what's really been kind of bananas going on in elementary school world recently, especially leading up to the holiday break.
I'm glad your kids are back in school. Congratulations. My God.
Well, they're not now. But
Yeah, but I mean,
oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's so bananas about this whole thing is because with the cold strains going around, there's strep going around, the RSV that's going around, just like when all the kids wait for school to start in the morning, what it usually be a playground full of cute, crazy kids. It was down to maybe a quarter of what we're used to seeing. I mean, which is great for the teachers. I mean, but it was just so nuts. And like a lot of kids are just getting sick. And I'm sure as you guys remember.
It's so sad.
There are childhood illnesses.
I know my kids.
They happen. Everybody.
But you know what? When my kids were in school and, you know, they were like in the 3rd grade or whatever, the parents that worked would always send their kids to school sick. So at least they're keeping them home now. Like we have a new, there's like a new protocol, you know.
There's a new appreciation too. Like at least for me, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but it's like if you see your kid is sick, especially before the holidays, why would you send a sick kid to school to get more kids sick and make their lives miserable?
Look,
you know,
kids circulate viruses wildly.
Yeah.
It's
Well, they're
always will
supposed
be.
to.
It always has been. It's just the way.
Yeah, they're gross.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
why
they also, their immune
They're
system needs to
disgusting
see
creatures.
this stuff. It needs to see some of it. It strengthens us.
We used to go to
and that's
Disney
what's
World
so
and
wild.
we used to go to Disney World and I always tell the kids, don't kiss Mickey Mouse's nose.
God, I wish my dad were alive now.
And,
he would go nuts.
one of them would, and then the next day be vomiting, projectile vomiting across the table.
Oh,
And
they
then-
do terrible things.
And then
You
the
guys
next day,
stop
the
with
next
the mom
one
talk.
would go.
I got to get Sabine. Sabine is gastroenterologist. I
the
really
thing
want to
is-
talk to you. Chris, what's the
thing is-
question? We got to get right to it. I've got something I really want to bring
Crazy
up here.
question is, you know, due to the viral outbreak of COVID and kids remotely learning, you know, children and everybody is still in the presence of major respiratory viruses that spread like wildfire and take weeks to clear up.
Yes.
So going forward, what's going to be the new protocol for, you know, keeping children or people who are infected at home and away from other people? Because in the world we live in, people get sick with all kinds of things all the time.
Chris, the new protocol is the old protocol.
Oh, okay.
You know what
Just
I'm
wait
saying?
till
We were
the
back.
doctors explain it.
The rational revolution is in. We're going to go back to sanity. We're going to go back to what we've always done. What you know, we live in a world that has reasonable sanitation and reasonable treatments and reasonable exposure, and we're going to go
We
back
have
to
a sewer system.
running our lives the way we always have. This is Sabine Hazan. She is a gastroenterologist. She's a great, excellent physician researcher, and I'm glad to see her on the Twitter Spaces with us. Thank you, Chris. Happy New Year, Sabine. You're up here.
Hey, thanks for
welcome.
having me.
You bet.
Thank you.
Of course.
So yeah, frustrating. I mean, I heard you, you know, say it. You know, I think we as a profession, medical profession, have been like, you know, silenced altogether. You know, we're not on stage, and you know, during the pandemic, when you hear people like celebrities or media talk about, you know, this virus, and the first thing that comes to mind is, why are they talking? They don't even know what a virus is.
Sabine,
you know,
that is in my head constantly. Well, the two headlines to shine a little light on your point. New York Times editorial board demands a lockdown. You should not have an opinion, let alone should we listen to your opinion. Joy Behar has strong opinions about hydroxychloroquine, a word she learned how to pronounce the day before. You and I have used that medicine for 30 years. What is going on here? What is going on?
And that was the frustration for me, right? Because it's like all this noise is distracting from the people that should really be speaking, right?
Yes.
And let me ask you, when in medicine ever has data ever been above
clinical?
The clinical.
Yes, never.
Right?
Never.
So
and when did evidence-based medicine supersede our judgment? Where did that come from?
Yes. And by the way, so you're mental health and I'm GI.
No, I'm way broader than that. I did internal medicine for 20 years when I was going to be a cardiologist, but I ended up through a series of things working a lot in the psychiatric setting. But I was going to be a cardiologist. That's the direction I was going. Yeah.
But imagine, would reading a book on how to perform a colonoscopy teach you how to do a colonoscopy?
Right. No, that's exactly right.
No, right?
What I always tell them is what I always tell the patient is I go, look, the material you're bringing to me, thank you for bringing me your Google searches, but I knew all that material at the end of second year of medical school. And then I spent 10 years seeing that in a clinical setting over and over and over and over again, and developing judgment about what the best thing to do is for a given clinical situation. And that like that last, do you hear the story that Anne was telling us about being in the ER and unable to get a little bit of steroids? Unbelievable.
And first of all, if a patient is agreeing and consenting and asking you, and he knows the risk, you as the physician cannot just say, I'm sorry, no.
Yeah.
You have to tell the risk and outweigh the risk benefits and then say, you know what? Fine, here it is. And not even put your judgment, frankly. Because how many doctors, oh my God, this whole pandemic, how many doctors have said to my patients, oh, ivermectin, no, it doesn't work. Hydroxy, it doesn't work. Well, listen, if I'm telling you a patient's oxygen, and I published that, I published 29 patients' data that basically had low oxygen and their oxygen improved on triple therapy or even quadruple therapy. I didn't make that up, right? Even I have videos that I showed the FDA. I'm like, look at this guy. His oxygen is like 80%. And now he's improving after ivermectin, doxy, and everything I've given him.
So, Sabine, people are now wondering what's going on. Why? First of all, how do we give informed consent to a 35-year-old or a 30-year-old male? How do we do that? And what do you think is going on where we're not getting the information, the data we need to be able to give people proper consent?
You know what's interesting? And what's interesting is because I've done clinical trials for so many years, I have so many friends that are in the pharmaceutical industry and everything, and people that are at Pfizer, medical directors and coordinators, monitors, etc. Everybody's baffled, even at the FDA level and the National Institute of Standards and the NIH. I go to these meetings, I've met with those folks, and I'm like, I don't understand why this one-sided narrative. Do we not believe that there's resilient microbiomes out there? Do we not believe that there's resilient immune system out there that do not necessitate, vaccination? Do we believe everybody's on the same platform? And everybody's like, their answer is, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know what's going on.
It's even more simple. I couldn't get agreement amongst physicians that the vaccines can harm people. I couldn't get any people to agree. I mean, and that's so obviously true.
That's such a taboo. There's a fear. There's such a fear. There was a fear with this virus, and there was a fear with speaking about the vaccine. And to me, if us as physicians are fearful, who can the patients go to?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Because we were the first one on the front line. Listen, when I stepped out of my house in March to analyze stools with COVID, I knew I was risking my life. I knew I was ready to die.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured, you know what? I better go out there myself and show that I'm okay and treat than having my kids die and nobody does anything, right? So I think we need to take courage as physicians, and we need to take our field back, and we need to speak up. Because, and it's not just you and me and Pierre Corey and Peter McCullough, it's every physician. We need to encourage them to speak and step up and talk about it. Because have you seen like the buzz in the hospitals? Like they'll talk in the hospital. They'll say, oh my God, did you see this doctor is in the intensive care unit after the vaccine? I'm like, well, why aren't you talking about it?
Right.
And then they come back to me and they're like, I'm never taking a shot ever again. And now they're starting to, realize like, wait, we trusted all this. And there's a lack of trust. And the big fear in all this, and which is a big shame, and I know because you and I try to stay midline. We're not anti-pharma, we're not pro-pharma. We really just want to see the data and help the patients.
Yeah.
And my fear is that we're getting into a world where we don't trust pharma anymore, and then that's going to hurt us as well.
I'm fearful that one of the big companies is going to get it taken out. Right? If this is what it kind of looks like, I'm fearful that one of the big companies is going to get taken out, sort of a Dalcon Shield type experience. And with these companies, we need them for their development and research. And
can you explain what that is, Drew? The shield or field thing?
Dalcon Shield was an IUD that caused terrible injury to women, and the company was some huge company got completely bankrupt by the liability for that, and I fear that something like that is going to happen again, or I fear that they're trying to avoid that or something, and that's what's motivating some of the goofiness, the spooky, weird behavior that we're having trouble explaining. But Sabine, I appreciate you being here. I just shake my head all the time. I'm just glad that doctors are talking and that we disagree and that we share. And I thought that conversation we had the other day in that Twitter Spaces was pretty positive, where most of us agreed on most things. We did.
Yeah, and you know what? I think those of us that don't agree need to show the data, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
that's all.
I'm having a battle with Liza Dunn on Twitter, and hopefully people don't perceive that I'm going after her. But I just think she doesn't understand what I'm seeing in the microbiome space, because I'm like light years ahead of everyone seeing the clinical picture of the microbiome.
Yep.
So to me, it's like, this is where you bring on doctors, and this is why also educating doctors on what's coming up in the front line. That's why I've stayed doing.
Uh-oh. Sabine, I lost you. There you are. Sabine?
And
there we go. We lost you for a second. But listen, I want to bring somebody up here. I'm gonna put you back down. But let's keep this
hear the
conversation
rage coming
going.
out of you guys, because doctors are always so laid back, like so cool.
We've been beaten down. We've been beaten down by our regulatory agencies, by insurance companies, by hospitals, by HMOs.
And you're bringing medicine back.
Attorneys. Sabine, am I right? We're just beaten down on every 100%. Front. And it's over. We have to take it back.
Yeah. Everybody's in the office between me and my patient.
Yeah.
From the person that controls the electronic medical records to the person that sells my electronic medical records to some companies.
Yep.
To now the media is telling me what to tell my patients.
Yep.
And now the government, California now is going to be mandating that I cannot talk about the risk to my patients. Otherwise I lose my license.
That's on Tuesday. That starts on Monday.
And guess what's going to happen if Governor Newsom comes after me? I'm running for office.
We'll do that anyway. We'll do it anyway. Get you in there. We need physicians in positions of authority. It'd be good.
But I don't want to. My job is in the microbiome space. I'm helping, shed some light into autism and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
Okay.
That's my
why
job,
you need
right?
to run.
Yep.
So that's
anyways. Thank you.
Keep doing what you're
All right,
doing.
Sabine, I'm going to put you back in there. Thank you so much,
Drew. I just want to harken back to 2020.
Yeah.
And you started off saying, unfortunately, on Fox, and that didn't work in your advantage, but you said the media needs to shut up.
Oh, I've been saying that the whole time. Just shut up.
You knew it, and then they were all like, "You're a COVID denier."
Yeah. Then I went from being a COVID denier to anti-vax to MAGA. These are all in the same weird category.
Because you were at the White House
not in any of those
trying
camps.
to help the homeless people. Like,
oh my god! Oh my god!
And the drug addicts. Yeah, you can't win. But I just want to see medicine not go down the tubes, because they,
I don't see pharma go down the tubes either.
Well,
they're very
doctors
important.
were going to be afraid to practice medicine and do what they do.
Correct.
It's like you're running from the law. It's awful.
Yellow.
So you heard a little bit about what we were talking about. Have at it.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Drew.
sir.
How are you?
Excellent.
Want to wish you and your amazing crew very happy New Year.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything you guys do. And so, a couple of points. Again, amazing show. And I was talking to someone today, and it kind of occurred to me that, what has changed over the last few years is that, physicians always had this ability to disconnect from what was going around them and put on a thinking cap
and focus
say,
on the patient.
No, and focus on the patient and focus on, for lack of a better word, a bullshit narrative.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, this doesn't really make sense. And I think what happened in the last few years was the fire hose of information became so intense that we as a community started drinking from the same hose as the media was feeding us, And I think what has happened, if you speak to a lot of people, at least the people I speak to, I'm always kind of astounded how they're kind of giving me the same stuff they watched on TV. They turn on whatever channel they listen to and they're like, oh, did you know this? Or I think I heard you early on today's show talk about China. And I'm always like, how much of the stuff coming out of China is truly reliable? Because if you remember the early videos,
almost none.
3 years ago, and I'm hearing the same people who said the same things to me 3 years ago showed zero skepticism after 3 years. I'm like, have you guys not been paying any attention? Like, am I on crazy pills?
And look at where their insane, useless policy went. You saw what the logical progression of that is. And by the way, it was never a medical intervention. It was a governmental, face-saving political intervention from the beginning. From the beginning.
And can anyone explain to me how the single most lockdown country in the world has the most number of cases, and why are people everywhere saying, well, I guess they didn't do enough? And I'm like, am I in the twilight zone? Like,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
How does someone say that with a straight face and be like, it's too bad, maybe they could have done more? And I'm like, do more like what? Like put people inside walls? Like what are we talking about? So like all of that stuff gives me kind of this really weird feeling of like, is it too late for a lot of people to see the light? And I guess the answer is we just have to keep speaking and hope that at least some people will, will snap out of whatever it is that they are under.
I hope, man. It's very weird. It's like nothing I've ever seen. I think there's going to be some sort of weird, what Steve Kershaw always calls red pilling, which is that people about 30% of people are going to wake up to understanding that the reality they've been fed is not the reality. It's not real. They've been fed some information, and some. I'm sure that's going to happen to me. Certainly, there's things I believe that are going to be turned out to be not true.
Which is fine, I think, as long as you accept the fact that a lot of your assumptions are not exactly the truth, which I guess every scientist's job is like, well, on a good day, I'm close to the truth, but I'm nobody smart enough to know the truth.
That's right.
And on a bad day, I'm in a different zip code or a different continent, right? I mean, this is not hard. But I think some people are so confident in their ignorance that it's scary to even listen to that.
I agree. It's very weird. It's very weird. I guess it's fear. I don't know.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you've covered, but certainly something to think about. There's a recent article that came out talking about how there's an IgG switching that happens with increasing number of boosters, where you go from IgG1 and IgG2 with the first couple of doses, and then with boosters you switch to an IgG4 response,
and that's less immunogenic.
It's non-neutralizing.
Yeah.
If you remember, that's also, there's a whole class of disease processes that are associated with fibrosis and inflammatory conditions called IgG, diseases that like autoimmune pancreatitis and whatnot.
You look at Dr. Wiseman. He is sort of zeroed in on this stuff. He is very concerned about that, and you are sort of seeing it reflected in the pattern of infection too. So there's something up. And this goes back to that same question. I mean, how many boosters are we going to give? How long are we going to do this? And at what risk?
I always joke. I'm like, are boosters the new cowbell?
More cowbell. That's hysterical. That is hysterical. All right, my friend. Listen, I've got to kind of
All
wrap
right,
up
thanks
here,
so
but
much for
Happy
having me.
New Year and thank you for being around
Happy
here.
New
We
Year to you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Happy
Bye.
New Year to all of you. We do appreciate everybody that comes into these Twitter Spaces and on these feeds. I try to watch you more very carefully on the Twitter, on the restream chats. I see you guys and what you're talking about there, and usually the conversations are kind of interesting. L. Ron Hubbard himself is actually there. Somebody named L. Ron Hubbard. Toms, I see you
He's
there. Chris,
alive.
all you guys, I appreciate. Yeah, I know he came back. Well, he's always said he would.
Hi, Tom.
And over on the Rumble Rants, they've been very active today too. I don't know, Susan, have you been over there at all? There's been some interesting conversation.
We batted some trolls over there. It was pretty fun. But yeah, we can do that now, especially the ones who are selling sexual links or something.
Oh, that's weird.
But yeah, and I wanted to tell everybody how much we appreciate your conversation on the streams. It's it's nice to not be called a clown or a quack 50 times during a stream, which happened at the beginning because we were attacked.
Of course.
And things are changing. I feel positive energy for the new year.
Well, I mean, here's Sabine, you hear Chauvin, and
I
the
know.
physicians are like, we have to take this. Is
They-
ridiculous.
they're voicing their opinion.
Every time it reminds me of that day I was on that news show, and the school board came in and said we're closing schools. I said, what doctor told you that's a good
I
idea?
know,
What
but then
infectious disease
But then
consultant?
people were
Nobody.
yelling at you, like,
course,
"Oh,
of
you're
course.
you're a clown."
Trump, clown,
MAGA.
None of the above, everybody. None of the above. But we appreciate your participation, nevertheless. Thank you, Molten Salt. Appreciate you as well.
I missed Jeff. I don't know where he is. I guess he
I don't
didn't
think
get
he
the.
came in today. I don't
No,
think
he didn't. But you know what? We did an earlier show, and if you guys want to know when we're going to have a show at a different time, we post it on Locals every day. You just have to go over there. It's $7 a month. It supports the show, and then you'll get an email, and you'll also, be able to know when, or just go somewhere where you can see, when the show's going to be live. I think you can get like on YouTube. We have, notifications and stuff like that.
All right.
Rumble doesn't do it. They do it a little late, and then they also post the show later. So, but we miss you, Jeff. Jeff, I hope you have a happy new year.
All right. We are back on Tuesday early, January 3rd at noon Pacific. Is that correct? With Megan Kelly. We are back.
Well, the jury's out on that yet.
All right. We're back with.
She may have something else. We're going to find out.
All right. If she is doing something else, let's move it back to 3, our usual time.
Of course.
We have Dr. Byram Brindle with Kelly Victory coming in. There he is up there on the screen as well.
We have to get back to LA and get in really
I
late.
want to bring in, much like Chauvin and there Ryan Cole coming up with February 1st again. And shoot, I'm blanking on the gastroenterologist name I just talked to. What's her name? Anyway, we were all just chatting, and I want to get more physicians in here to talk.
And
about
check
this.
out Drew's Instagram. You can see our makeshift studio here in New York. I'm very proud of it.
I noticed the sun behind me went away. You blocked it out.
Oh no! How's it look?
No, it still looks good.
It looks good. Looks fun. Looks fun.
good.
There's some people I really should. Sabine, I'm sorry, Sabine. That was Sabine I was talking to.
It's got a dark, like smoky feel. I
But
can't see
but
this.
particularly if we don't have. Actually, you guys could ask some questions on Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll see. We might be able to find something else. I mean, I don't know. Well, we got to get back to but we're having a great discussion, even though we don't have guests, because now our Twitter spaces are our guests.
No, the calls are always good. I like doing calls, and I like talking to you guys, and I like
And
when the
you've
physicians come up and
gathered a
chat.
group of friends on these other Twitter spaces that you've been doing. So they show up and they're willing to speak. It's awesome.
All right, everybody. Happy New Year. That's why we were here. Really, was to wish what?
Did I already show you guys this picture of my boy? Did I show you guys this one?
There
yet?
is a Happy New Year. Let's take a look, Susan.
There's
she's
this Happy
coming
New
around.
Year's boy. Look at him. Look at that sweet boy.
Canada Nation.
That
That is
is-
a happy boy.
He is a little angel. a
On
sweet
to
boy.
his second year. Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
Year 2.
Oh.
Don't let him kiss Mickey Mouse's nose.
Right. So we appreciate you all again. We want to wish everyone the happiest of New Year's. 23 is going to be better. 22 wasn't so bad. But
Although
it's still,
Caleb had a little COVID
we've
run
still
through
been
his
under
Christmas
we've
party.
still been under the cloud of the last few years and trying to emerge.
But
from
was it
We will
really
continue that
serious?
emergence.
Is everybody okay over there? who's
Yeah,
got COVID? Are you
everybody's
guys
all good
recovering?
now. I think the baby, Camden was the
course.
one that got it first, of course. He's better in 2 days. then I get it. And this time was much faster. I actually went in and got medicine and I was fine within a few days. My wife, she's a mom. So of course she just keeps on powering through. She trained like 4 people in Pilates that morning. She's like, I have COVID. I tested positive. I can barely move, but oh yeah, I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm going to drive people here and do that. I'm like, you got to lay down, woman. You got to, it's those mom adrenaline, I guess, is something kicking in. Nothing can knock her down.
It's Omicron. Omicron is a lot different than Alpha and Delta was. A lot different. A lot different. Okay, Caleb, thank you for everything. Thanks
but
for
everybody's okay on the other side, your grandparents or your parents, and they're all good? Okay.
Yeah, the grandparents are all
That's good to know.
For all your work, both you, Susan and Caleb.
I didn't get it. I had it last year on New Year's, remember? Sorry, he's trying to sign off. I'm actually going to go out and celebrate New Year's tomorrow in New York for the first time.
Yeah,
so it'll be my first time in 10 years.
We've never been to Times Square either.
No.
Heading down that way.
No.
Is there
It's
music?
gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Is there music coming in here, Caleb?
I mean, we're supposed to go to the Hamptons, and I feel bad, but I don't want to. I want to come home early. I don't want to stay out too late.
It's because of you we are able to do the 3 of us are able to serve you in this way with these digital formats, and it's really a pleasure to do it, and hopefully we'll continue to refine and build and give you better products in 23. Happy New Year, everybody. We will see you in the new year.
And don't drink and drive.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help. And by the way, when I did The Masked Singer, remember I did?
Yes, I do. I do.
I have a vocal problem now. I've lost my mid range. I have a varice on my cord, so it's hard for me to sing the way I used to.
Yeah.
But it'd be something on the order of Parisiamo io la lingua e gli pugnale. Stuff like that.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Your vag good and dry?
My vag, it was
Did not
spooked.
tingle.
It was spooked. It was it wasn't totally dry, but I was like,
I ran away off the table. I'm 63. This is absolutely my last chance to do something like this.
Can't call your agent. No one's coming to save you.
Me doing this is like feeling as alive as I can possibly feel.